Mizzou did what it needed to do, and apparently no one got seriously hurt. So I'm going to call that a win on multiple levels for the Tigers. Let's break down this UMass game right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, yes, not a lot to complain about. Missouri's big-time 45-3 win in Amherst, Massachusetts, but I'll find some nits to pick later in the program. First, I want to start by mentioning today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I do want to get started today, just in case, especially for those of you who may have tuned out the game a little bit early. I can't totally blame you considering an unseasonably warm day here in mid-Missouri and, well, also some more interesting football happening on other networks as well as Alabama ekes out a victory over South Carolina. But again, in case you missed it, between the third and fourth quarter, Eli Drinkwitz said Luther Burden is going to be just fine. Those were his words, he'll be just fine. Well, early in the third, Burden took a big shot on what was a high throw across the middle on a slant route from Brady Cook. And, well, honestly, it looked like Burden landed awkwardly on his right arm. I felt like his right arm kind of got jammed there, but no, it was his left shoulder that seemed to be bothering Burden. Clearly, he went into the medical tent. Didn't look like he was enjoying life at the moment, and Missouri fans were left to speculate and get very nervous about his status. Of course, ultimately, Eli says he'll be just fine. You know, he was goofing around about the whole thing, joking around about Burden's injury, saying like, hey, I could put him back in and get some more rushing yards, get you up to 100 if you want, that type of thing. So obviously not a big concern there, but just in case you missed it, I did want to lead the program with it because obviously Burden's status is that big of a deal, I would say, especially considering not a ton of newsworthy stuff happened in the UMass game, but as always, I'm going to make it interesting for you, including, you know what, some people were wondering about Nate Noel as the game started. The Missouri running back was dressed out, seemingly active for the ball game, but in the first quarter, we got the word that Noel was not available for the game because of, quote, back tightness. Now, there's a vague injury for you, and, well, honestly, you could have just said load management, I would say. That was my immediate suspicion when Marcus Carroll and Jamal Roberts started off the game taking the carries, and even Kewan Lacey got into the game relatively early in the second quarter, I believe. And I just think that Missouri has been very careful with Noel all season, even going back to the scrimmages in fall camp. There was one late scrimmage in fall camp where Noel sat out, and Drinkwitz was open there about, this was simply load management. I honestly wonder how exactly the SEC injury reports work here. Do they not even come into effect when it's a non-SEC game? It seems like that may be the case here. The Tigers were also late to rule out defensive end Joe Moore and also linebacker Tristan Newson. Again, I wouldn't be too worried about either one of these players at the moment. They played last week, didn't hear about any serious injuries leading up to the game. But if you're going to be resting anybody, obviously this is the moment to do so. And maybe the most positive thing of all to come from this game is that I thought for the most part the Tigers very much looked like a team that was ready to play this game, despite of everything I just laid out to you there. Basically, what I would call some load management from the Tigers this afternoon. Well, despite getting those obvious signals from their head coach that actually we're not taking this game all that seriously, right from the jump, it seemed like the Tigers were ready to play. Luther Burden, of course, breaks out a huge run of about 60-plus yards or so for a touchdown. the Tigers were ready for just about everything except, well, a fake punt there in the second quarter. I'll talk more about that in sort of the negative column, but I think what you wanted to see here from Missouri not only was a fast start, but just overall domination in general. Tigers give up 3 points. As I suspected, Missouri's defense, well, we've got some question marks after the Texas A&M game for certain, and the other two games against Vanderbilt and Boston College, the power conference games as well. Fair to have some questions there, but I think one question that has been answered: can this Missouri defense dominate inferior competition? No question about that at this point. But another big thing here to me, it was beautiful to see the two young guys from Lee Summit, Missouri, get on the board. A couple of guys who've gotten a big amount of hype in the preseason, of course, in the high school ranks as well. Obviously, I'm talking about Williams Nwaneri, number one, who got quite a bit of action today. I think probably played a dozen or so snaps, let's say, just based on my quick glancing at the game there. I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but I am sure that Nwaneri did get his first career sack as a Missouri Tiger. So that was a beautiful thing to see. Maybe even more encouraging for the rest of this season in particular. Josh Manning got on the board. Joshua Manning got on the board with his very first touchdown as a Missouri receiver, 63-yarder. Just a simple little play into the flat, but Manning really showed some explosion there with the ball in his hands. And as I was saying in my previews leading up to this UMass game, I would like to see some players other than Luther Burden. And, well, Manning had the opportunity here, obviously with Luther out of the game. But even when Burden's in the ball game, let's see some of those other receivers like Manning, like even Theo Weiss and Daniel Blood, and especially get those guys in motion, give them a little bit of a quick go to give them some explosive potential plays as well. It doesn't always have to be on Burden, and those guys, because of the amount of attention Burden gets, well, they're going to get better matchups. Manning was simply too fast for the angle that Minuteman was taking. There's no question about that. So his first touchdown puts Missouri up 38-3. It's truly a laugher at that point. And I will say, once again, there was a pass down the field on the boundary to Mookie Cooper. The ball's incomplete. And I have to admit, I was getting a little bit sarcastic in terms of, wow, shocking that didn't work, because no matter how many times Missouri tries it, I don't believe it has worked this season. I'd like to see Josh Manning be in that spot on those balls, especially on the boundary of the defense, on the boundary, the out-of-bounds markers. You want a bigger man down there. Manning is definitely that guy. I think he's just more of a high point the football guy, obviously, than the shorter Mookie Cooper. And Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri left Brady Cook in just long enough to finally get Brett Norfleet and the Missouri tight end passing game going. But it certainly wasn't all perfect for Brady Cook and the Missouri passing game. Let's pick some nits and get into some more positives, including Norfleet, coming up here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about ZBiotics, because ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, by the way, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. And I'll just tell you from experience, I've had some fun tailgates over the years, especially celebrating a Missouri victory. You're going to want to make that Z probiotic, your ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink. You want that to be your first drink, and you'll have a much better Sunday. I promise you that. So go to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout. ZBiotics. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will return your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get an itch or a hunch during the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And when it comes to the NFL slate this week, I got to say, I get it. It's been rough with Deshaun Watson, everybody. But do the Eagles deserve to be favored by 8.5 points over anybody at this point? Give me the Browns and the points plus 8.5 this week. But regardless of what you're into, you got to do it at FanDuel.com. In a 38-3 ball game, it's obvious to ask the question, hey, what is Brady Cook, what is any starting quarterback still doing in there? Well, the color man Sam Acho said, well, they need to build Brady Cook's confidence right now. And I totally agreed with that logic, by the way. And this was a good drive here, this final touchdown for Missouri, not only helping Brady Cook, I think, get in a little bit better of a rhythm, but also Brett Norfleet, of course, in particular, somebody that Missouri has needed to get going. If Missouri can make him a true weapon in the middle of the field, that should really open up a lot for everybody else and make Missouri a much more dangerous team down the second half of the season here. A 36-yarder down the seam to Norfleet, set up a 1st and goal, and then another ball to Norfleet for a touchdown there in the middle of the end zone. So a couple of beautiful throws, and I thought a couple of quick decisions there by Brady Cook as well, which is something that I like to see, because I think at times this season, Brady Cook has been hesitant, just not quite seeing it as confidently as he was last season. By it, I mean seeing the field, making his decisions as quickly as maybe he should. In particular, I thought a good example of this was end of the first half. Didn't end up being a huge deal by any means, but with about 8 seconds left, a huge return, by the way, by Corey Flagg, of course. He makes an interception in the red zone. The Minutemen, that was definitely their best drive of the day by far. The Tigers shut the door, though, with an interception. Flagg makes a great return. Honestly, if he'd have just kept running right down the middle of the field, or maybe to the right, he may have scored there, but Flagg, not having eyes in the back of his head, couldn't see the probably fastest guy on the Minutemen there to the outside, to the left there, was able to tackle him down. But because of that, well, Cook and Missouri had one more shot, at least, to throw it up into the end zone. Again, I got to go back and question the design here a little bit, just the usage of our players. You'll notice if you go back and watch this play, to Brady Cook's left, you've got trips receivers, 3 receivers to his left. Well, the singled up receiver to his right is Mookie Cooper. Now, to me, that's where you put Theo Weiss. Or just in general, you put a guy who you trust to jump up and just throw a fade route, some type of jump ball to the end zone, because that's about all you have in terms of time, by the way, with 8 seconds left. You don't want to throw it to the middle of the field, get tackled, risk the player holding you up and running off a bunch of time, running off the 8 seconds, all that good stuff before you get off a field goal attempt. So to me, that's the obvious play there. So I can definitely criticize Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore for at least their personnel usage, in my opinion, or the play design at the very least. But to me, the bigger point, though, is you're Brady Cook. It's your 5th year as a quarterback in this Missouri system, in college football, in the SEC. You got to know the situation a little bit better than that. You cannot take a sack in that situation. Again, the hesitation there, that's one thing that Cook has just shown this year that I don't think he showed nearly as much last season. The ball is just not coming out on time. And in particular on that play, you've got to have an internal clock there going, okay, this is basically a 1-2 and get it out. That type of timing throw. And when he just holds it, takes a sack. Missouri was frankly lucky that didn't run another second or two off the clock. Otherwise, no field goal attempt would have been forthcoming. By the way, a nice kick, I should say, by Blake Craig. A nice day for him in a windy day, made all of his field goals and extra points. So again, other than a little bit of a shaky day against Vanderbilt, I'd say Blake Craig has been a real plus on this season so far as well. Another positive for Missouri today. By the way, another excellent game from Missouri interior lineman Chris McClellan. I thought he at one point in the game, he took a hands to the face penalty that was flagged on the Minutemen, but he forces his way through it, just powered his way through that hands to the face penalty and knocked the ball out of the Minuteman quarterback's hands anyway. Of course, the quarterback was rather fortunate to recover the football there. Also later, either in that drive or maybe the subsequent drive, Dalen Carnell dropped a pick six for Missouri as well. So really, if anything, the defense could have put up even more impressive numbers, getting another couple turnovers there. Just really some fortune there for the Minutemen is about all that kept them from the score, maybe even getting a little bit worse. So bad, in fact, that Drew Pine was actually able to play the entire fourth quarter. And there's been a small but relatively loud, I suppose, part of the fan base online that would like to see Pine in the game. Unfortunately, in a couple moments there where he actually had to throw the football, didn't really show a whole lot, in my opinion. 3rd and 7. Was under a little bit of pressure, throws the ball incomplete, ball not particularly close to anybody. And then on 3rd and 23, obviously a horrible spot there, 3rd and 23. He did throw into double coverage, not in particularly close to the Missouri receiver either. So if you want to go back and tell me that, hey, Drew Pine did this, that, or the other at Notre Dame, I'm just going to have to take your word for it, because there aren't enough hours in the day to go back and watch Notre Dame games from 2022, in my humble opinion. So I just want to see what Pine gives us with Mizzou. Right now, again, this is not a big criticism on Pine. This is more of just pushing back against the people who want to just jump to whoever the next backup quarterback is at the first sign of poor play. And to be brutally honest, Cook needs to be better. Even today, there were times when he was a little bit hesitant, I thought. That's why I thought, again, it was good. That last drive in particular was nice to see the ball coming out of his hands quickly, aggressively down the middle of the field. To me, that's something Missouri should think about and look at and try to emphasize for the rest of the season, because even against Texas A&M, yes, Missouri, you can blame Cook if you want to for being slightly off on the pass. Maybe we should have ran the route a little harder. Regardless, the point is that seam ball to Weiss could have easily been a 60, 70-yard touchdown against Texas A&M just off his fingertips. The point is that kind of play can work for Missouri in the second half of the season. Let's see it, because the Tigers can't just throw it outside the numbers and in the flats all day. And let's pick some more nits in a 45-3 victory by Missouri, because that's just what I do, by golly. Don't mean to be negative, but it's coming. Oh, it's coming. It's coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to tell you about Robinhood, because with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product specific disclosures. Visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. You know how off season and during the season too, for all you everydayers out there in the audience, you know how I've said that the punting game has evolved so much for the better, to the point that, well, there's hardly a ball ever returned these days. Well, not so much in Amherst, am I right? That was a de-evolution, if anything. The punter for the Minutemen looked like one of Pat McAfee's bottom of the barrel contestants from the game day kicking contest. I'll say that. Wow, that was rough. I know it was windy, but Luke Bauer definitely fared a lot better when kicking against the wind. That's for darn sure. But as far as some other ugly moments from the game, there was a bad kickoff play. Fortunately, Missouri was already up 21-3 at this point, but this was the part of the game where, well, the Minutemen started to get a little bit of life. Marquise Johnson kind of misplayed a ball into the wind. It landed well short of where he was, and then, well, as footballs tend to do, bounced in an unpredictable direction. Marquise had to scramble to find the thing. Basically ends up Missouri starting inside of its own 10-yard line. We eventually punt. Minutemen have good field position, start getting into Missouri territory, by the way, before that Corey Flagg interception basically ended the game. Well, the thing is, for Missouri, this is not the first time this season, or really even in previous seasons, where when you kick the ball a little short on Missouri, you do sort of the, hey, we're going to try to bounce it at the 15 or 20 on a sideways kickoff. Well, Missouri always seems to be caught off guard by this tactic. I think one of the problems is, in the past, Missouri at that level of kick coverage would sometimes have players that were not accustomed to catching the football. Sometimes they'd even be defensive linemen, that type of deal. So instead of having skill players out there on that level of your kick team, you want to have guys out there who can block, obviously, but in my opinion, you got to have guys who can occasionally catch the football when needed as well. And by the way, Missouri, the wind was not exactly a shock there. Could somebody tell Marquise Johnson to maybe move up just a tiny bit, maybe all the way up to the 5-yard line or something like that? And then at least far enough to where if the ball's over your head, you can just let it go and hit beyond the goal line for an automatic touchback. That's really all you're looking for more often than not. And if you're looking for a big return, and, well, the potential was for it there, I just thought Eric Link, the Missouri special teams unit, just in general, got caught a little bit off guard once again on a kickoff that was short. It seems like we're just sitting there waiting for the ball to get kicked into the end zone, and anything else is almost a surprise to us. I think we got to take a little bit more of a deeper look at what we're doing at that level of kick coverage too, by the way. I'd like to have some guys who, hey, if the ball's kicked to the 15 or 20, I want you to be able to catch it if necessary. Hey, remember when John McGaffey for Oklahoma? Of course you do. When John McGaffey picked up the ball, ran it into the end zone all the way for a kickoff, well, he wasn't the guy deep. People forget that. He was at the second level of the defense, but a wide receiver, a guy who could catch the ball and also make a play just in case that ball was kicked short. And guess what? It ended up with a touchdown, one of the big plays and memorable plays in recent Missouri history. And thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen on this Saturday afternoon. For your second listen, definitely check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy. Hey, if you've listened to the SEC squad, you know Chris Gordy is a fantastic podcast host. Easy for me to say. Also holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Yes, you heard me, Big Ten people. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.